Please enjoy the story Beautiful Kang Daniel. Prologue. A stupid song that can reach heaven. I stay up praying all night that I'll reach your heart. The story in which, what happens when you aren't ready to let go of the one you love yet. Chapter 1. Chapter 1:1, 1 equals nothing without you. Vertical line. Daniel sighed. He took out the cigarette from his mouth and threw it onto the ground. Using his feet, he stepped on it until the fire was no more. He put his hands in front of his leather jacket. He leaned in on the outside wall of the convenience store. He was waiting for his friends to arrive. He closed his eyes for a second, and suddenly a memory flashed through his mind. "Young man smokes?" Daniel shockingly asked the girl. The girl sighed, frowning. "I know, right? It's so disgusting, Doug." Frustrated, obviously. Daniel laughed, moving closer to her. "This is why you should date me instead. I never smoke." He giggled, kissing her forehead. The memory. Daniel has always been thinking of memories of the past. It's like a routine. Whatever he does, a sudden memory would always reappear in his mind and play like a movie. Whenever Daniel is being reminded of the past, he'll groan, or most probably yell out in frustration. But this time, he didn't. He calmly took a deep breath in and a deep breath out. "Hugh, you thinking again?" His group of friends yelled out to him as they all take off their bike helmets, adjusting their hair, walking towards Daniel. "Ah, is my boy still thinking about her?" His best friend, Wood, wrapped his arm around Daniel's shoulder, teasing him, nudging his elbow. Daniel was somewhere in Boston. He finished university, and he decided to continue work as a barista at a cafe near his apartment. Daniel's heart ached at the thought and mention of her. Sometimes, he'll wonder what she's doing in Seoul. They stopped talking a year ago, and the year flew by super fast, without even realizing. Daniel learned how to ride the bike. He gained some new friends. He picked up smoking, because to him, smoking was the only thing that was able to numb his pain. "Come on. I suggest we drink our hearts out tonight." Wood yelled into his face, laughing like an idiot. Daniel just weakly chuckled. He suddenly had no energy to do anything. "I'll pass," Daniel sighed, before putting on his helmet. Daniel's group of friends were all confused as to his behavior. Hey, Mr. Kang, let's party, at least, okay?" "No drinking." Jiru stopped Daniel from adjusting his helmet. He suggested another idea. Daniel sighed, finally giving in to his group of 10 friends. He said, "Fine, let's party," before getting on his bike. Not everyone had their bikes, so most of them had to share. The rest of the boys started their engines and rode off to their destination. It was a club at downtown East. Daniel and Wood loved going there, because it wasn't loud or packed with people. It was cool for people like Gwendolyn and DY to attend because it isn't like any hardcore club party. The moment they arrived there, Daniel took off his helmet. He walks into the club, and he sat at the biggest lounge there is, to fit a party of 11 people. "I'm getting wasted tonight, baby," Wood and Sung-woon both yelled as they ran over to the bar and ordered countless of drinks. The rest of the boys decided to dance sober, because that was their source of entertainment. But only Jason was there at the lounge, sitting together with Daniel. Daniel takes out his phone. He was waiting for a text notification to come out from her, but there's none at all. Daniel groaned, slamming his fists onto the table. He was so close onto crying, but he couldn't not hear. A few minutes later, the tall woman came into the club. She got her eyes set on Daniel. She was wearing a thin layered dress, black lace. Her body was slim. She had long brown wavy hair, and black heels on. She walked over to Daniel and sits right next to him. "That's your bike out there," she whispered over to him. He looked up from his phone and took a quick glance at her. He scoffed, not interested, moving away from her, closer to Jason. The woman raised a brow. "An attractive man like you taken?" she asks, biting her lip, moving closer. Daniel lets out a soft cocky chuckle. "No, I'm not, and I most definitely don't want to be taken by you." He raised his voice, slamming his fists onto the table. He walked out of the club, leaving the 10 boys behind. He got out and got on his bike. Instead of riding off into the sunset, he took out another cigarette butt and lights it up. He took out his wallet, taking out a small picture from the sides of it. It was a picture of a girl, his ex-love, Hyene. Thinking of the name made Daniel tear up. There was no point in acting tough now, he just wanted to cry. "I told you I'd wait for you, but I never knew it'll be this long." Daniel sobbed softly to himself, a tear dropping onto the picture of her. He rubbed his temple, frustrated at how long he has been waiting. "Come back, Hyene, I'm nothing without you," he whispered to himself, shedding another tear. Suddenly, he felt a pair of hands on his broad shoulders. He looked up. It was Jason. "You okay, Dan?" the boy asked the sobbing man on the bike. Daniel eventually shakes his head, crying even more. "No man, I just feel like it's pointless. She'll never come back." Jason shushed him. He comforted Daniel for a while, letting him cry on his shirt. "She will, Daniel, she will come back, just not anytime soon," Jason reassured him. And for once, Daniel thought positively that she will come back and they will love once again. Chapter 2 Chapter 2 The Smile You Left Behind. Vertical line. Daniel slammed his fists on his desk. He yelled in frustration, his desperate cry of help by her. But the only thing overshadowing his pain is the loud cries of thunder and strong flashes of lightning across the sky. It was raining, once again. Another sleepless rainy night in Busan. Daniel sighed, running his fingers through the locks of his hair. Suddenly, another memory flashed through his head again. "Why do you keep touching my hair? It's greasy and oily," Daniel whined, trying to get away from the girl's hands. The girl groaned, before teasing him and hitting him on his chest repeatedly, which made Daniel wince in pain, jokingly, before finally giving in to her. "First of all, Mr. Kang, your hair feels amazing. It's neither greasy or oily, it's soft and fluffy and I want to run my fingers through them forever," she confessed. Daniel laughed. "Well, now since you put it that way, okay, I understand your love towards my hair," before wrapping his arms around her waist, pulling her into a tight hug. Again, Daniel screamed in frustration. He knew there was no way getting her back, although right now, he would have gotten on his bike and ride all the way to Seoul for her, even if it takes days and going underwater. Suddenly, a text notification popped up. It was from Jaewon, "and I would love to play with your cats." Daniel lets out a soft chuckle, before replying Jaewon with a "come over." Exiting out of Jaewon's chat inbox, he can't help but click on Hyene's inbox. Their last text was a year ago. "Are you doing fine in Seoul?" "Yes, okay, take care. I love you. I love you too," and they never contacted ever since. Daniel tried to text her multiple times, but every time he does that, a prompt will come up. "Send a message to Hyene. I miss you, vertical line send vertical line delete. Error 64215, the user is no longer in service." That made Daniel annoyed, because every single time he had the chance of reducing the distance between them, something always has to come up. Every single time Daniel thinks of her, he will forever be reminded of the day they both last saw each other. It's practically the one thing that he plays in his mind every single day. "Perhaps we'll meet each other when we're better for each other," the line that is stuck in his mind. "We'll meet again, Daniel," another line that is forever playing in his mind. Because every time he has doubts of waiting, he will forever remember her mouthing those exact words, and it will make him believe again. 10 minutes of staring into user no longer in service, Daniel heard a knock on his door. It was his group of friends. When Daniel opened the door, Sung-woon and Seo-woon barged in, screaming, "Let's get this party started." They already had their own popcorn. Who knows where they got it from? Could be Woojin just stealing it from the movies or Minhyun actually making it, but either way at least Daniel had something to keep him occupied. They sat in a group, all huddled together. Woojin and Jaehoon was having fun throwing the popcorn around to people like Sung-woon, Jaewon and Jaesung. Jin Young and DY were both sharing their thoughts about the movie It's Sad One, of course, because Jaewon always says that he gets inspired from watching sad chic flicks movies. The rest didn't mind though, because as long as they're together, they don't care what they do. Sung-woon was crying at how the main character has cancer and she can't love again. And Gwendolyn was concentrating hard as Sung-woon. The only person who couldn't concentrate was Kang Daniel, who had his eyes on his phone the entire time, doing nothing other than waiting. "You better throw your phone away before I do it for you," Seo-woon whispered over to Daniel while throwing some popcorn at him. Daniel snickered. "Watch the movie before I throw your popcorn down the drain, will you?" He was annoyed, because all he wanted to do was text her and hear her voice one more time, but everyone is telling him to move on. Sometimes, whenever Daniel has free time, he'll check on her inbox. And when he's lucky, he'll find a day when the girl is in news and online. But every time he finds himself in that situation, he'll always lose control and have a sudden panic attack. "Hyeni is in services," send a text to her now. "Fuck hello vertical line, no way DHISIS stupid vertical line, ha 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 hi. Vertical line, I miss you. Vertical line, fuck vertical line. Hyeni is offline." And it was as if God answered his prayers. It was one of those days where he was lucky. After staring at her inbox for 30 minutes, he received a prompt. "Hyeni is now in services," and hooray message now. Yes vertical line no. Daniel panicked. He screamed out of surprise. "Holy shit, she's in service! She's in service!" he yelled, surprising everyone around him. The rest of the boys all had their attention on him. What do I do now?" Daniel panicked, his arms shaking. He was afraid of losing her now when he practically has a chance to get her back. "Call her." Jaehoon yelled at Daniel's face. The rest of the 9 boys agreed, nodding their head. Daniel muttered the countless of okay before actually pressing the call button. "Send her a message now." Yes vertical line no. Voice called. "Hyeni." Yes vertical line no. "You are dialing Hyeni." Hello." The soft voice of the sweet girl finally could be heard after a year of distance apart. And when everything was perfect, Daniel couldn't even find the right words to speak. He just stuttered, uttering out silent words. Sung-woon hit him with a pillow before Daniel could actually speak properly. "Jaehoon Hyeni, do you remember me?" was the first thing Daniel said after a year of not speaking. He heard the girl let out a soft gasp from the other side of the call. "Kang Daniel," she uttered, her voice slowly becoming softer. If Daniel could see her face right now, wherever she was in Seoul, her eyes were getting red and her nose was pink. She wanted to cry but she couldn't. She spent a year crying over the boy she still loves, and when they finally speak again, it's like there were no more tears left for her to cry. I miss you," Daniel confessed. Half of the boys silently squealed, screaming into pillows. And another half were cringing, throwing popcorn everywhere. "Are you still waiting for me?" the girl asks from the other side. Daniel lets out a soft chuckle, his heart warm. He smiled to himself and he said, "Whatever it takes till I die, remember." Daniel laughed to himself. There was a moment of silence, and it suddenly felt like old times, where they would always call each other late that night. Her voice made Daniel feel nostalgic. It has been a year since he heard her voice. It brought back every single memory he could think of, ones that he thought didn't even exist. Daniel, it's been a year. The girl tried to say something but he stopped her mid-sentence. I was young. I never knew it would be like this. But the smile that you left behind, it still remains in my heart, Daniel whispered, trying hard not to sob. It's the only thing that keeps me going, he continued, eventually letting out a tear. There was another moment of silence, before Daniel heard a girl sobbing from the other end of the call. Hyene? Baby, you okay? Daniel asked, concerned. I'm sorry, Daniel. I'll call you or text you when I have the time, okay? I've been really busy lately, but I will, the girl softly spoke, reassuring him that she was fine over at Seoul. Oh, and Daniel, she called him one more time before they hang up. Daniel hummed. I miss you too, she confessed, then hanging up. And in that moment, everything perfect vanished. They turned into dust. Everything perfect turned into memories that will forever be stuck in Daniel's mind. Chapter 3. Chapter 3, The More Afraid I Get. Vertical line. Daniel woke up with a non-broken heart this time round. He woke up, feeling happy for once. Why? Was it because the love of his life finally talked to him? Or was it the fact that she also missed him? Either way, Daniel felt different when he woke up. He stared at the ceiling blankly, thinking of last night's late conversation. He turned to the side and was greeted by his best friend, Kim Jae-won, sleeping right next to him, with his cat, Roonir, on top of him. Daniel's eyes widened. He lets out a loud shriek, shocked. Jae-won also lets out a shriek, and wakes up. The loud shriek turns to another loud shriek when Daniel found the rest of his best friends slowly waking up from the floor. Who the fuck yelled? I was trying to sleep. Sung-woo groaned, rubbing his eyes. Daniel looked around his apartment. Why the hell are all of you here? What happened last night? Daniel bombarded his friends with questions that they can't answer to because it was too early in the morning to think. I think Seong-woo got you wasted last night because you were so happy that she finally answered your call, Kwanlin answered on behalf of everyone. Seong-woo groaned. He woke up from his sleep, rubbing his eyes. He slurred fudge, softly gasping at the word fudge. DY cringed at Seong-woo's comment. No, you only made Daniel drink. He soon explained what happened last night. Jae-won groaned. Then his cheeks went pink after seeing Roonir on his stomach. Daniel tried to ignore Seong-woo's stupidity and he immediately paid attention to Jae-won and Roonir. Daniel lets out a soft chuckle. So is this the cat that you've been wanting to see? Or did you want to see Peter? Daniel questioned, tiredly. Jae-won examined the cat for a while before shaking his head. I wanted to see Yuki, he exclaimed. All 10 boys knew who Yuki was. But some of them didn't know the backstory of Yuki and how Daniel got her. Who shit did someone mention Yuki? Seong-woo slurred. He stared at the ceiling. Daniel tried not to let another memory flash through his head but it didn't work. Gosh, I can't believe you're making me do this, the girl lets out a chuckle as she held Yuki in her hands. Daniel grinned at her. I can't believe we're like parents adopting a child, he commented. Don't worry, you'll be a great mom, and I'll be a great dad, taking care of the both of you, he giggled, kissing the kitten. Daniel snapped out of his reverie. He breathed in, and breathed out. Another memory, another day. Yuki. It's Ilsa somewhere in the balcony, most probably playing with Peter, Daniel nervously laughed. Jae-won sighed. I'm not going to hurt it, Daniel, he reassured the boy. When Hyene left, Yuki was the only thing that reminded Daniel of her. The only real thing that he could hold on to remember her. Has anyone ever told you you look exactly like Yuki? The girl giggled, carrying Yuki in her arms. She looked up and down at the cat then the boy. Daniel scrunched his nose. I mean, we're both cute, right? He teased her. She faked a gag. Yuki's cuter. She rolled her eyes jokingly before Daniel hit her in her forehead as a choke. Can someone please shut up about Yuki before he cries again? Sung-woo groaned. The 10 other boys just laughed it off. It was nice seeing them bond together like this, Daniel thought. Daniel sat on top of his bike, putting the cigarette butt in between his lips, lighting it up. He removed it, puffing out the smoke. It was currently snowing in Korea. It was another day, where Daniel just stands around and do nothing other than smoking and recalling back certain memories of him and his ex-lover. Ah, what a bummer. This could be even our first winter together, Daniel thought to himself as he places out his palm, letting the snowflakes land on his palm and then watching them disappear slowly. Oh, Min asked the moment he got out of the convenience store. Daniel just took a quick glance at him before looking away. Min walks towards the boy and leans on the back of his bike. Daniel offered Min a bud. He rejected it kindly. I don't smoke, man. You know that. Then letting out a soft chuckle, he pushed Daniel's hand away from him. Daniel just shrugged, then continued to smoke. You know, Dan, I don't get it, Min voiced out. Daniel raised a brow, hands in his pocket. He turned to look at Min, expecting him to continue. I mean, like, why do you smoke? Firstly, it's bad for your health. Secondly, the girl that you love hates guys who smoke. And thirdly, smoking causes you to either have cancer or die faster. Min listed down the reasons. I mean, you want to die faster. You keep telling us about how you want to wait for this girl and then you just keep smoking, which could most probably ruin your chances of seeing her. He continued. Daniel removed the bud from his lips. He looked at Min and laughed. It numbs the pain, my friend, was all Daniel said. Min scoffed. I knew you would say that, okay. And first of all, that's a dumb and lame and pathetic excuse. The boy took a moment of silence to think. We all get addicted to something that takes away the pain, man. And suddenly smoking makes me forget, Daniel said. But you just said you didn't want to forget, dude. You're so confusing. Min laughed, patting the back of Daniel's shoulder. At some point we all have to let go and move on, right? So if she doesn't come back, smoking is just a step forward, Daniel exclaimed, as he stared at the snowflakes falling. Yeah, a step forward to death, Min whispered under his breath. Daniel heard it, but he just ignored. Daniel took the bud out of his mouth and threw it onto the floor, stepping on it. He looked over at Min. He smiled to himself. Look, I stopped smoking. Cool, right? He rolled his eyes. Min scoffed. Let's meet some girls, he suggested. Daniel was taken aback. He was offended. Why would I? Daniel asked. Min replied with, you need to loosen up. Get laid. Pumping his fists into the air. So this is Yeren. Pretty name for a pretty lady, right? Min smirked at Daniel, nudging his elbow while the girl wearing a thin layer of silk walks past by them. Soon, this Yeren girl tied up and down at Daniel, walking closer, and ended up sitting right beside him. Min winked at Daniel before walking away to somewhere else, leaving Daniel alone with Yeren. The girl had her hands on his thigh. She bit her lips. Daniel laughed. He grabbed her hands and placed it on her lap. Not interested, Daniel smiled at her. She gasped. Then why the hell are you here? She groaned. I'm just trying to make my friend over there worry less about me, Daniel exclaimed, pointing over to Min, who was on the dance floor dancing like an idiot alone. Now I think you should leave, because every girl in here doesn't seem to make me excited, especially not you. Daniel turned over to Yeren, waving her goodbye. The girl scoffed, standing up and walked away. Min looked at Yeren leave. He shrugged, looking at Daniel, who was sitting alone at the lounge drinking by himself. He sighed, walked over and sat right next to Daniel. I should have gave that girl a chance, am I right? Daniel asked Minhyun, fiddling with his fingers under the table. Minhyun raised his brows. No, she's a slut. I mean, I'm 80% positive she slept with Seong-woo. Minhyun chuckled, trying to lighten up the mood between Daniel and him. He sighed, wrapping his arm around Daniel's shoulder. He comforted him. I mean, I guess I have to start opening up to these girls. I most probably won't even see Hyemi ever again. Daniel sulked, breathing hard, trying not to tear up. I mean, honestly, I guess I still need to be loved because the longer I spend my time alone, the more afraid I get. Daniel sighed, leaning his head back. Minhyun pouted. He ruffled Daniel's hair. It's okay, Danny boy, you have me, you have us. We love you, man. He smiled. No homo though, he whispered, right after which made Daniel chuckle a little. And in that moment, Daniel realized something, and it made him thankful for that. Chapter 4. Chapter 4: I miss you so much. Vertical line. Another sleepless night in Busan. With the snow falling peacefully outside, Daniel stared at the ceiling right on top of him. He couldn't seem to sleep. Seconds later, he heard something jump on his bed. He turned to look at the blankets, and it was Yuki, the cat that he adopted with his ex-love. He smiled at the sight of the cat. Yuki crawled over to Daniel and snuggled up right next to him, slowly purring itself to sleep. Daniel scrunched his nose at the cat's cuteness. He stared at Yuki falling asleep, and soon, Daniel found himself falling asleep too. You're doing it wrongly. Woojin clapped in between sentences as he groaned at Sung-woo because he can't seem to get his steps right. Sung-woo had a flustered look on his face. I thought I was doing great. He shrugged. I think you're doing great, sweetie. Gwendolyn yelled at Sung-woo from the side of the room. Sung-woo winked at Gwendolyn and then sent him a flying kiss, but Gwendolyn dodged it. Yo, miss me with that gay shit, bro, he uttered under his breath. Hey, I'm a Hyung, you're a dong thing. He raised his voice at Gwendolyn jokingly. Gwendolyn laughed. Oh sorry. He shakes his head at the childishness of his older brother. The 10 of them were at this dance studio that Seong-woo recently found to sometimes practice his dance. Woojin, Jae-hoon, Sung-woo and Seong-woo were currently practicing the new dance choreography. Daniel was sitting in between Jae-won and Jae-sung, laughing at Sung-woo getting all his steps wrong. Sung-woo apparently picked up the new hobby. When will you? Jae-won turned over to Daniel to ask him. I don't need a hobby. I'm perfect on my own. Daniel let out a cocky laugh, shrugging. Jae-sung cringed. So did Jae-won. Hyung. I heard Jae-hoon joined a boxing class. DY interrupted their conversation. Oh really? Jae-won gasped, then yelling Yo Jae-hoon Park. In English, the four stopped dancing. Jae-hoon turned around. You're taking up boxing classes? He asked. Jae-hoon nodded his head. That's great. Danny boy, this is a perfect opportunity. Jae-won nudged his shoulder. Daniel looked around, his friends giving him the go for it. Look. He can't help but let out a small chuckle. Me? Boxing? Never. He tried to change the topic, but Jae-sung barged in. No you, Kang Daniel, will start to going to boxing class with Jae-hoon, Jae-sung insisted. Jae-hoon stopped dancing. That's a great idea. He excitedly commented. Daniel shakes his head, smiling to himself while repeating saying no. Jae-won smacks Daniel at the back of his head. Daniel winced silently in pain, looking at Jae-won. You're going and that's fine, he said sternly. Minhyun popped up and exclaimed. Oh? And you said you needed something to numb the pain, right? Boxing will help you, instead of smoking, the rest of the boys there agreed. Daniel scoffed. I already write music as a hobby. I don't need boxing, but got cut off when Jin Young abruptly interrupted. But writing music doesn't help you numb the pain, right? It just makes it worse. which made Daniel think about it for a minute or two, before actually agreeing to take part in boxing classes with Ji-hoon. You have to bend down like this and just hit the mark, okay? X marks the spot," Ji-hoon explained to Daniel whatever the right way of boxing was. Daniel tilted his head, correcting his posture before actually hitting the correct spot. Ji-hoon clapped his hands, proud of his older brother. "There you go. Now just continue punching it, but remember to duck," Ji-hoon proudly commented. It took Daniel less than 10 minutes to get everything right. His posture was right. His hitting was right. He knew what he was doing. It was like as if fate brought him here. And it definitely makes Daniel forget about the pain and the struggles, which was what Daniel wanted to do the entire time, get rid of the pain. "Now, when I get pissed, I usually imagine whatever makes me angry and just let my frustration out," Ji-hoon exclaimed. Ji-hoon showed an example. He punched the spot and kept on repeating, "Hug. I hate you, chicken. Why do you have to be so delicious and make me fat?" Hitting the punching bag again and again. Ji-hoon turned over to Daniel, smiling. Daniel just let out a soft chuckle. "Now you try it," he insisted. Daniel shrugged before actually trying this whole thing out. Daniel thought of the worst thing that was happening to him right now and decided to lash out his anger on the punching bag. But the only thing he could think of was his ex-love. He had no other choice but to put that anger to the punching bag. He hits the bag. "I hate you. Why did you have to leave when I needed you the most?" he yelled, punching the spot repeatedly. "Why did you have to leave?" Daniel gathered his anger and lashed it out on the punching bag. Daniel felt like this whole boxing thing was a better way to express his emotions. Thinking about Hyene, Daniel couldn't help but let out a tear, and with all his might, he tried so hard to not let Ji-hoon see, but it was too late. Thinking of Hyene, it doesn't just make Daniel let out a single tear, but lots of it. Thinking of Hyene, Daniel's whole persona changed and it often confuses his friends. "I miss you so much. Now I finally feel our space apart." Daniel groaned, trying to hide his tears, but the more he punched, the more he cried. "I just miss you so much. But why didn't I know?" Each time Daniel said something, he punched harder. And right after that last sentence, he did his final punch harder than before falling onto the ground, leaning on the strings attached behind him. He had his hands to his ears. He was crying profusely. At this point, there was no denying that. Ji-hoon sat right next to him and pat his head, trying to comfort his best friend. It killed Ji-hoon or any one of his friends to see Daniel so worked up like that and then cry himself to sleep every night. All they wanted to do was kick him or punch him out of his misery, but it was easier said than done. "When I said lash out your anger, I didn't mean it like that," Ji-hoon nervously giggled, trying to lighten up the mood between the both of them. Daniel just sobbed silently, his hands covering his eyes. He didn't want Ji-hoon to see him cry, but it was already too late for that. So what Daniel did was just sit there, on the cold floor of the boxing ring, and bawled his eyes out until he felt better, and Ji-hoon was there for him each and every second of the way. Chapter 5 Chapter 5 So beautiful, beautiful. Vertical line. Daniel had his fingers placed gently on the strings of his guitar. He strummed gently, playing with a few chords, trying to find the perfect melody. "So beautiful, beautiful," Daniel cooed to himself. He thought about the right words to write and to sing. He sighed, messing up his own hair. He wrote that lyric down onto his notebook. He needed inspiration. All he wanted to do was to call his ex-love and hear the sound of her voice one last time before writing the song about her, and so he did. "You are now dialing Hyene. Hello." The girl's sweet voice echoed through Daniel's ears. "You sound happy today," Daniel chuckled. "That's because I am, Mr. Kang," she giggled. "Why? Is it because you found a boyfriend?" Daniel joked around. Yeah. How did you know? Question mark. She teased him. Oh no, darling, but I'm still in love with you! Exclamation point. Daniel joked pretentiously. Shut up, Kang. Daniel, I love you too, so why the sudden call? Oh, nothing. I was just writing the song and I had no inspiration, so I decided to call you. What have you been up to? Me. I was extremely sick for the past week. I couldn't eat, wake up, I couldn't even study. Are you okay now? Daniel questioned. Of course. Maybe that's why I'm so happy. Geez, I've been crying myself to sleep because I was so scared that I couldn't get better. She sighed. Well, now you are. Good for you, Daniel laughed. She hummed. Hyene. Daniel cooed. We're going to meet again, right? He asked. His voice suddenly became deep. We will, Daniel, I promise you soon. She smiled to herself. Very soon, she whispered before hanging up. And it was in that moment when not only Daniel regained hope, but he also knew what to write. So beautiful, beautiful, you're more beautiful than anyone else, so don't be sick. Don't cry. If you can hear this song, come back to me. Daniel sang softly, strumming his guitar. He looked up and turned his glance over to Jaewon, his musical buddy. What do you think? I mean, it's just a small part of a chorus, but it's not bad, don't you think? Daniel's eyes lit up when he finished singing. He has always loved music. It was like a part of Daniel. But he liked to keep his hobby low-key. No one knew about him writing music except for Hyene. Daniel, it sounds amazing. Hyene giggled as she wrapped her arms around the neck of the boy. Daniel just showed off a cocky smirk, giving her that I know look. Daniel decided to pick Hyene up after a college party ceremonies. Hyene wasn't the type to drink, but she hadn't seen Daniel for almost 2 months and she missed him, so she decided to drink away the pain. Selmy invited Daniel to her party because she knew that Hyene wasn't going to go back to her dorm stable and sober. And of course Daniel did come, although he had tons of assignments to finish up. So Daniel took Hyene back to her dorm and decided to tuck her into bed. While sitting right by her, Daniel opened the notebook and wrote down song lyrics. Hyene noticed, so she asked, and he sang for her, and that's how they ended up in that position. HM. That's nice, babe. Now you're drunk, so go to sleep. Daniel chuckled, patting her head, playing with her hair. Hyene just frowned. But Danny boy, that was so you up her hot, she slurred, still giggling. That made Daniel's heart flutter. He scrunched his nose at the sight of her, drunk and clumsy and acting like a child. Why don't you ever tell people that you do music? She asked a genuine question, still drunk. Daniel shrugged. I don't know. I guess I'm scared that people will think I suck. Hyene gasped. Well, you don't. But don't worry. I won't say anything, because I'm a good girlfriend. She giggled for like the 1000th time. For a drunkard, you're really giggly. That's cute, Daniel whispered to himself. He was about to leave to get himself a drink, but Hyene pulled his hands, making him fall right next to her on the bed. Don't leave me, Daniel, she pouted, snuggling right next to him, her head at the crook of his neck. Daniel looked right at her, slowly closing her eyes to sleep. He chuckled. I won't, baby, trust me, I won't, and whispered to himself. Daniel. Jaewon's fingers snapped right in front of him. Daniel immediately got out of his own little memory bubble. Took a trip down memory lane again. Jaewon softly questioned. Daniel slowly nodded his head before putting the guitar away from him. Well, I thought that was amazing, Daniel, Jaewon complimented his best friend. Daniel, that sounds amazing. He heard Hyene's voice at the back of his head. Daniel shakes his head, in hopes that the voices will go away. Did it make you think of her? Sorry, Jaewon giggled, trying to lighten up the mood. I'll stay with you, to help you write the other part of the chorus, okay? Jaewon offered help as he threw himself on Daniel's sofa, Switching on the TV. Daniel just sighed. He leaned his head back on the wall. He stared outside the window, the snowflakes slowly falling down and then disappearing as soon as it touches the icy cold floor. He stands up and heads over to the toilet. He washed his face. With his hands on each side of the sink, he looked at himself in the mirror. Daniel knew that there was someone missing. He just couldn't quite put the finger on it. Suddenly, there was so much space behind him when he took a look into the mirror. "Hyene, do you think my hair looks better down or up?" Daniel called Hyene into the toilet with him, to let her see the two hairstyles that Daniel had in mind. Hyene rubbed her chin with her fingers. She thought for a solid 2 minutes. She hummed to herself, "I think both looks great." Daniel, finally speaking out her thoughts. "And is it wax?" "Hey you!" Hyene faked a gag, taking a closer look at Daniel's fingers that had hair wax on them. Daniel had a confused look on his face. He took a look at his fingers. "Of course, it's hair wax, dumbass. Then how would I have achieved this look?" He pointed at his hair that was now in a quiff. Hyene took another closer look, closer than before giving Daniel an A expression. "Okay, scratch that." Hyene smiled at him before leaving, but Daniel apparently grabbed her wrists and pulled her body closer to his. "Daniel, I love you, but I hate hair wax, so can you please let me go?" Hyene pouted, in hopes that Daniel would let her go, but Daniel immediately had his fingers in Hyene's long wavy brown hair, messing it up. Hyene yelled in both anger and frustration. "Kang Daniel! Get your fingers away from my hair!" she cried, pushing the boy away from her, but all Daniel did was laugh, scrunching his nose at the sight of the girl whining. She took a look at herself in the mirror. Her hair was all messy now. She looked like a broom. She stomped her feet. "Daniel, it takes me 20 minutes to get such perfect hair. What am I going to do now? My class is starting in 10. She whined. Daniel pulled her closer, his arms around her shoulder. He took out his phone to take one mirror selfie to remember that day. He laughed to himself while looking at the picture before putting his phone into his back pocket. He turned to look at the sad girl. He wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her body close to him. He Eskimo kisses her for 5 seconds before kissing her forehead softly. "Don't be sad, baby. Look, I'll help you, okay? Last resort, you'll just have to go to class looking like a mock." Daniel giggled, kissing her one last time. Daniel groaned in frustration. He slammed his fists onto the side of his sink. "Please stop appearing in my mind," he thought to himself. No wonder the mirror looked so empty. It was because Hyene wasn't there with him. Out of the blue, Daniel finally gained inspiration. He ran to get his guitar and notebook. He strummed a few melodies before he got the perfect tune. Jaewon just stared at Daniel from the couch, squinting his eyes at his best friend trying to get the chords right. "I miss you, come back to me," Daniel cooed. He looked over at Jaewon with bright eyes. Jaewon laughed loudly from wherever he was sitting. "That's my best friend." He let out a psychopathic laugh while running over to him and giving him a tight hug. Daniel groaned, pushing him away. "What made you think of that?" Jaewon asked. Daniel just stared at him, before smiling to himself. "Someone?" he shrugged to himself. Jaewon grinned. "It's her, isn't it?" he questioned. Daniel looked at the man in front of him. He slowly nods. "It's always her," he whispered softly. Chapter 6 Chapter 6: Come back to me. Vertical line. Daniel's apartment door busted wide open when 3 of his friends, Woojin, Jaehoon and Seongwoo, barged in, running inside without even knocking and then throwing themselves onto Daniel's bed, shaking him up. "Daniel! Daniel! Wake up!" Seongwoo slapped Daniel's face left and right. Woojin jumped on the bed, screaming like a dolphin. "Wake up! and Jae-boon went to throw cold water on Daniel's face while screaming the same thing. Within 10 seconds, Daniel shoots up from his bed and had his eyes widen when he found 3 of his friends in his apartment. With Daniel slurred, rubbing his eyes together. Seong-woo slapped Daniel right across his face one more time to properly wake him up. Daniel, you won't believe this, but we think that we just saw Hyene in Busan. Seong-woo shakes his best friend up. Daniel's eyes widen completely. Where? When? How? What? He hastily bombarded the 3 guys with questions. At the park just behind her university that she used to attend to. Seong-woo answered his best friend. Daniel throws the blanket away from him. He quickly wears his jeans and a black hoodie before running out of his apartment with just slippers. Jae-hoon, Woojin and Seong-woo following behind him. Since his apartment and her university was closed, it took Daniel about 5 minutes to arrive. He panted as soon as he arrived there. With his hands on his knees, his back bent, he breathed out huffs and puffs of smoke. The snowflakes falling down slowly. He searched everywhere but to no avail. Hyene! Hyene! He yelled out while running everywhere but still no sight of his ex-love. After running around like a dog for a few minutes, Daniel gave up and decided to sit down on the park bench where he used to sit with Hyene the day before she left to Seoul. Jae-hoon sat on the armrest while Seong-woo and Woojin sat on each side of Daniel. The 3 boys sighed. Seong-woo pats Daniel's back. I am sorry, damn, it's just that I swear, I saw her, he reassured Daniel. Daniel just groaned. He shakes his legs while running his fingers through his hair. It could be even anyone. Fuck, if you're not sure, then shut up. You guys got my hopes high for nothing. He raised his voice, burying his face in the palm of his hands. You sure you okay? Jason asked Daniel as he punched the punching bag in the boxing ring of the boxing studio. Daniel just continued to punch and punch the bag while sweat was running down his forehead. Jason and Jin Young was there for Daniel. No, I am not. I mean, shit, they got my hopes high like that. He groaned while punching the bean bag. Daniel immediately stopped and just fell onto the ground, his hands covering his ears. He whispered, I thought she came back to me, softly to himself. Jason sighed. Hey, I told you she'll come back, right? Coming up to Daniel and patting his back, Daniel just kept himself shut while thinking of Hyene. As if on cue, Daniel's phone rang. It was from Jae-won. Daniel sighed, before answering it. The first thing he heard was Jae-won panting, oh my god. Danny boy. I think I saw Hyene. Daniel stood up. His voice got deeper. Where? Was all Daniel could say. Jae-won panted heavier. I mean, I saw her walking around her old university, then me being me, I accidentally yelled out Hyene. And then she turned and ran because she thought I was gonna hurt her. How do you know it's her? Jae-hoon, Seong-woo and Woojin thought they saw her too. Daniel's line got interrupted when Jae-won said, because she turned around when I said Hyene. Daniel just sighed. I don't know, maybe you thought it was her. If she was here, she would be called me, right? He tried to lighten up the mood. Jae-won eventually agreed, you right, and then apologizing for calling him so late at night and then hanging up. Daniel just stared at the ceiling, still having his boxing gloves on. Jin Young whispered, all 10 of us know what she looks like, which made Daniel slightly convinced. Yeah, but we all know what she looks like online, we have never seen her in real life. Jin Young Jason was siding Daniel, because Daniel knew for a fact that she wasn't back in Busan. If she was, she would be called Daniel, right? Daniel stood up. He grabbed a towel. He was headed for the showers because he needed to take his mind off a few things. One of them was Hyene and her trip back in Busan. Daniel planned on having a great shower, but that was until Jason and Jin Young ran over and banged on the bathroom door. Daniel jumped. He shrieked like a girl. "D won't? Okay, please cover up first, big boy." Jason's eyes widened and then looked away. They were closed and all, but they still had their boundaries, you know. Except for Daniel and Seong-wood, those two had no boundaries. They could do whatever the hell they want and at any time. Daniel stopped the shower and grabbed a towel and wrapped it around his torso. "Okay, well, you might not believe this, but Sung-woon called to tell us that he might have seen Hyene and Youngman together right at the park." Jason finally finished his sentence. Daniel immediately was pulled into it. He was damn sure that it was Hyene now. But with Youngman? Why? Daniel thought. He felt betrayed for a moment, but that didn't stop him from meeting her. So he put on his shirt and pants, grabbed his leather jacket and ran out of there as fast as possible. He reached the park in less than 15 minutes. It was the fastest he has ever ran. It was cold. The temperature was about 9 degrees at night. Getting colder. Daniel only had his leather jacket to rely on. For a second, he believed that Hyene was back in Busan. He searched the park everywhere. No one was there, absolutely empty. Eventually, he gave up. He sat down on the park bench where he used to sit with her and he just buried his face in his hands. He was so close onto letting out a tear. He pulled out his phone and dialed her number and the rings went to voicemails. Daniel's heart ached. He knew she wasn't here. "Hyene, I just come back to me. Hyene," Daniel sobbed into his phone, then hanging up. He cried to himself for a little while before he heard footsteps behind him, followed by a soft voice, "D." "Daniel," echoing behind him. Daniel stopped letting his tears drop. He stood up and turned around. He was being greeted by a girl, with shoulder-length brown hair, a grey hoodie over her torso and some black jeans. Her hands behind her pocket, her eyes were watery. Daniel's eyes widened, and jaw dropped. His heart skipped a beat because it was the one and only Hyene. Hyene, the girl that Daniel has loved and waited for, is finally in front of him. She had shorter, wavier hair. She grew taller just by a few inches and he swore she became chubbier and cuter. Daniel immediately let out tears of joy. He scrunched his nose and ran towards her, wrapping his arms around her shoulder and pulling her in for a hug. The girl buried her face into his chest. She quietly sobbed. Daniel pulled away. He cut her face. "Oh no, baby, what's wrong?" He was concerned for her. The girl looked up at him. She wiped away her tears and let out a weak smile. "Daniel, I missed you," before pulling him in for a kiss. And in that moment, everything felt perfect. It felt so surreal. Because the girl that Daniel has been waiting for is finally standing right in front of him. She really did come back to him. Okay, hey, race to make things cuter. When Daniel hugged her, he looked like the gift from above. Circumflex accent. Circumflex accent. Isn't that cute? Him scrunching his nose and hugging her tight like that. Chapter 7. Chapter 7, As White as the Ocean. Vertical line. Daniel scrunches his nose at the sight of his ex-love right in front of him. He can't help but smile foolishly at her. The two were sitting at a cafe that they both loved going back when two of them were seeing each other. Daniel ordered his regular iced coffee and Hyene ordered iced latte. Daniel had his chin on the palm of his hands and stared at the girl in front of him with eyes of indulgence. The girl got shy in a matter of a few seconds because it has been a year since they last talked or seen each other. "You don't know how happy I am right now, Hyene," Daniel whispered, smiling, and vice versa. "Why did you come back so soon?" he asked the girl. A smile creaked up on her lips. She leaned back on her chair. "I'm moving back to Busan," she announced. Daniel couldn't help but leave his jaw drop. You're moving back? With your parents?" Daniel bombarded the girl with questions. "Yes, They decided to come back to Busan and I still have about 5 months of school left here. She smiled, looking at the happy side of Daniel. There was a long moment of silence before they both realized it was 4 a.m. in the morning. The cafe was opened for 24 hours. They were talking and catching up on like 4 hours in there. It really did felt like old times. My friends, told me they saw you with Youngman here. Can I just ask why were you with Youngman? Daniel changed the topic. Her smile faded away. She shakes her head. Oh, when I first arrived, I just walked around the university and the park. Then I coincidentally met Youngman there, she explained herself. Jesus, that guy's everywhere, right? She laughed. Daniel agreed, laughing along with her. So what do you do now? Hyene asks. Daniel frowned. He was literally nothing without her. I made new friends. And I ride the bike now. He sheepishly smiled. Daniel told Hyene everything, except for the part where he smokes now. Heck, Hyene would be so disappointed in him. It'll kill him, and he wouldn't want the risk. For now, he would just keep it a secret between him and his friends. Hyene's eyes widened. She gasped. Really? Wow. I can't believe you actually have friends now. She teased the boy. He rolled his eyes jokingly at her. She laughed it off, before reaching out for his hand and intertwined hers with his. I am just joking, Daniel, she giggled. You ride the bike? That's awesome. Can I ride on it too? She raised her brows. Daniel smiled widely at her, excitedly. He said sure. Sure. You want to take a ride on it now? And Hyene willingly agreed. The two head out of the cafe. Daniel introduced Hyene to his bike. It's beautiful, Hyene whispered to herself. Daniel nodded his head, stared at her indulgently. I know, right? Daniel said. She agreed and off into the sunset they go. It's still as beautiful as I remember, Hyene softly spoke. She took off her helmet and placed it on the seat of Daniel's bike. Daniel apparently really did took off into the sunset, but this time, sunrise. He took her to the beach, where they used to go together if one of them wanted to skip lectures and had no other else to head. The beach used to be their special place except for them. Daniel and Hyene sat on the soft sand and felt the wine rub against their skins. The ocean waves coming back to meet the sand, then going off back into the sea. It was beautiful, very beautiful. They say memories are like a storage room as wide as the ocean. Daniel broke the silence between them, looking at the sun rising and meeting the horizon. Hyene looked to her left, at Daniel's side view. I get lost in them all day, he whispered, then meeting eyes with the girl. When you were gone, all I felt was loneliness, he continued on, then staring back at the Sunday. Hyene rests her head on Daniel's shoulder. This loneliness was the only trace of you that I could hold on to, he added on. The girl looks up and rests her chin on his shoulder, their eyes meeting, then total silence falls against them. Silence, only the sound of their hearts beating as one could be heard. So I force myself to shut my eyes, and endure through the day, he whispered, before leaning in towards her. Without thinking, she did the same, and soon, their lips met and they kissed. A year worth of wait, all in that 10 seconds kiss. Daniel pulled away. The girl pouted at Daniel's emotional yet poetic words. Daniel kissed her forehead gently, then whispering, be with me, you Hyene. His words lingered in her head for 5 seconds. I missed the chance to be with you last year, and I'm not going to make the same mistake again. He was sure of his words. Hyene weakly smiled at him, touched by his words. She pecked his cheeks, then looked into his big eyes that were staring straight into her soul. I'll be with you, Kang Daniel, she said. I'll be with you until the day I die. I lost you once and I don't plan on losing you again, she continued. That was the day Daniel and Hyene got together. After years of them sharing their love towards each other, after losing each other not only once, but several times, after years of everything, Hyeni and Kang Daniel finally got together, and it was the day both of them would never forget. I am publishing a song with FAC soon, so hype it up. And Yadanik and Hyeni are back. Chapter 8. Chapter 8, Zero Base. Vertical Line. Daniel bust open the door of his hangout place, which he and his 10 friends called it Zero Base, open and watched being greeted by everyone. Daniel's fingers were intertwined with Hyeni's. His 10 friends took a while to process everything before screaming like a little girl. Hyeni! The Hyeni! DY shrieked, emphasizing on the. Jaewon was screaming so loud it sounded like opera. Seong-woo was shrieking, throwing pillows everywhere, and the rest did the same, excitedly jumping up and down. Wait! Those kids are holding hands, Jason gasped, stepping back. Does that mean Minhyun slurred? They're together. Sung-woo finished Minhyun's sentence. Daniel smiled, nodding his head, and then there cues the loud screams again. The couple just giggled to themselves. Jason slowly walked over to the both of them and eyed them down up and down. This is Hyeni. Wow, he gasped, stepping back. Seong-woo was screaming, that's my best friend. Which made the girl laugh. There's finally a girl in Zero Base. Woojin shrieked, making everyone agree to him. Daniel just rolled his eyes jokingly. Let's go, he said, grabbing her hands and walked her out of the place. Where are we going? Hyeni asked. The trip down memory lane, baby, Daniel grinned. How's your mom doing? Daniel asked, his arms behind his head, looking at the baby blue sky. They were at the river. They both laid at the mountain grass patch silently. The river was where Daniel used to go to reflect on things. It was far away from anything. The view from the hill was amazing, and the river had crystal water and it was so spacious. So when it's a windy day, you're damn lucky. Great, I guess. She quit her job, that's why she's moving back to Busan. Hyeni answered his question. I'll be done with all the moving by next 2 weeks, I hope, she sighed. She was breathing in the smell of the nature around her. It was her first time there anyway. I finally understand why you come to this place, she chuckled, looking at Daniel who was staring at her with eyes filled with lust and love. If I could kiss you, I would, Daniel whispered to himself, but Hyeni heard everything. She rolled her eyes back. Then what are you waiting for? I am finally your girlfriend. Hyeni was about to finish her sentence when Daniel sat up straight. He cut her face and crashed his lips against hers. I love you, too, Hyeni, Daniel whispered in between kisses. The girl just giggled. I love you too. Daniel opened the door of his apartment and his 3 cats quickly ran up to the both of them. Runir and Peter were meowing at the sight of Hyeni. Yuki, in fact, was running to her, then jumping and clinging onto her leg, wanting Hyeni to pick her up. Yuki, I miss you, baby, Hyeni said in a high-pitched tone, acting like as if the cat was her child. With Yuki in her arms, she repeatedly kissed her. I haven't seen you in a year. She giggled. Daniel wrapped his arms around Hyeni's shoulder. I told you we'll be a family, he whispered into her ear, then laughing to himself. Hyeni gasped. I don't want to date a man who is gradually becoming a cat lady, then chuckling. So you met my friends, you met my cats, who else should we meet? Hyeni changed the topic. Hyeni put Yuki down onto the floor and she pursed her lips. Kenta. I missed him. She clapped her hands in excitement, jumping up and down, giggling. Let's not meet anyone else tonight, yeah? Daniel smirked. He slowly wrapped his arms around her waist. She pursed her lips. She furrowed her eyebrows. What do you mean by that, Daniel SSI? She folded her hands. I mean let's have some alone time, it's been long, anyways, right? Daniel whispered, his voice deep, showing off his strong Busan dialect. Yeah, it's been a long time. But Hyene was about to finish her sentence when she was interrupted with Daniel's lips crashing against hers. Daniel pulled her waist closer to his body, her fingers running through his hair. Daniel's hands roamed around her back. Whatever you want to do, there aren't any rules, Daniel whispered into her ear. Hyene eventually found herself taking off Daniel's jacket and then tugging on the hem of his shirt, wanting him to take it off. I'll leave myself to your fingers, so play me however you want, he whispered in between kisses. Daniel's shirt was on the ground at this point. With Hyene's legs around his waist, he walked over to the room so they could have some privacy. With that, Daniel made love to Hyene. A year without seeing each other, he had his fantasies. I want to death. Why do they keep having sex? Chapter 9. Chapter 9, Let's put everything behind us. Vertical line. I am Youngman typing. Hyene, I miss you. Oh, wow. Is there any place in your heart that would ever forgive me? You did nothing wrong to me, minimum. I regretted everything I did to you. We passed that stage, Youngman. I feel like if only I didn't treat you that way we would be worked out. Youngman. Is there any way we could work out? Youngman. Shut up, Hyene, stop typing. I am trying to write a long essay here. Oh hug. Youngman is typing. Youngman, I need to tell you something. Youngman is typing. Stupid boy, stop typing. Youngman is typing. YOUNGMIN. Daniel and I are together. Youngman is typing. Youngman went offline. You're telling me you're with him? Youngman groaned, clenching his fists. The two were at the cafe that Daniel works in since Youngman wanted to see her so badly, and Daniel was afraid that he'd do something bad to her. Plus, Daniel's friends were surrounding the place. They dispersed themselves into cliques as they slowly spied on Youngman. But unfortunately, Daniel didn't know that Youngman and Hyene were meeting. He didn't want to work too. It was only Daniel's friends there to protect her. She didn't want to put another burden on Daniel's shoulders. Youngman, I don't get why you're so triggered. Hyene sighed. She was calm until Youngman interrupted her. He slammed his fists onto the table. Because he doesn't love you. He raised his voice. There weren't people in the cafe except for the 10 of them. Everyone turned to look at Youngman. Stupid bitch, Seong whispered to Jaewon and sipped his drink. Youngman had no idea they were Daniel's friends. Yeah, stupid boy yelling in a cafe to an innocent woman, Sung-woo shakes his head. Youngman rolled his eyes. Youngman, I love him. He has proved to me that he loved me. Why can't you just be happy for me? Hyene groaned. Because? I don't know. I just hate Kang Daniel. Youngman yelled. Again, everyone in the cafe looked at him. Ah, look at this boy, screaming again. Jason rolled his eyes. I know, right? He's most probably psycho or something, Minhyun commented. Jaewon laughed. To be clear, Youngman did hear all those comments. Since the cafe was small and they were speaking super loudly. Jin Young was behind the counter, being the barista for the day. Give Daniel a chance, please. We can all go for lunch. And you both can sort things out. Look, before all this tragedy, you were like my best friend. And I'm sorry that I can't see you anything more than that. Hyene explained her point of view. Youngman groaned. Why should I? Because if Daniel can put the past behind him, why can't you? And I expected you to be even more mature than Daniel, Hyene exclaimed. Youngman laughed. He shakes his head, biting the inside of his cheek. Fine, I'll have lunch with y'all. He was finally convinced. Look at this boy, he can't even put the past behind him, Woojin whispered behind the newspaper. I know, right? He's forever being so petty, Jae-hoon scoffed. I hope he gets help. Guanlin shakes his head. Youngman slammed his fists onto the table. He stood up, glancing at everyone in the cafe. "What's your problem, huh?" He turned around, facing Woojin. Woojin jumped. He was shocked. "Hi Korean." "Don't speak," Woojin mumbled in English, shrugging. "You bastard, talking crap behind my back. I can't even put the past behind me. You can't even mind your own fucking business." He walks over to Woojin, with clenched fists. Seong-woo stands up from the table next to Hyemi and runs to Youngman. "Hey! Don't fucking touch him. He's a kid." He pushed Youngman. "And who the fuck are you?" Youngman groaned. "I could ask you the same thing. All you do is run around. You're like hyenas, bitch. You don't know when to stop." He lets out a cocky laugh, looking back at Hyemi. "Come on, Seong-woo, let's go." Jae-won tugged the hem of Seong-woo's shirt but he ignored. "Don't talk about Daniel like that." Seong-woo changed the topic. "You know why Hyemi doesn't love you? Because you only think about yourself, you self-centered bitch." He raised his voice. That was when Youngman sent his fist flying to Seong-woo's face. Seong-woo fell onto the floor with a loud thud. Hyemi stands up, she yelled. "Youngman, stop it!" Trying to get closer but Min-hyun stopped her from getting closer. The rest of the boys surrounded Youngman. "Don't fucking touch him!" Sung-woo yelled. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Guanlin laughed. "Screw you." Seong-woo got up, wiping the blood that was coming out of his lips. He threw a punch to Youngman and now he was the one who fell onto the ground with a loud thud. "Seong-woo!" Hyemi yelled. He was about to punch him again but he stopped after hearing her voice. If she didn't yell, he would be already broke all of Youngman's bones by now. Min-hyun let her go. She ran over to Seong-woo and calmed him down. She checked up on his wounds and adjusted his messy shirt and collar. "Calm down, Woo. Go take a breather. I'll check up on you later." She cut his face, whispering at him to leave. Jin Young and Jae-won accompanied him out. Hyemi pulled Youngman up and checked up on him. "You okay?" she asked. Youngman pushed her away. But luckily she didn't fall down. Jae-woon grabbed her, in case she lost balance. "What the hell was that for, Nan?" Jason mumbled under his breath. "Screw you and your little gang, Hyemi," Youngman scoffed. "My gang?" Hyemi was taken aback. "Yeah, your gang. Don't talk to me ever again, Hyemi," he yelled at her, pushing her to the ground before walking away. Seong-woo saw everything from outside. He walked into the cafe before Youngman could even leave and punched him one last time, the punch that sent him to the ground. "Don't fucking touch her, you bastard!" Seong-woo screamed, punching Youngman repeatedly. Hyemi wanted to stop him but he was too angsty, he couldn't be stopped. So Jae-woon just told her to let Seong-woo do what he gotta do. Hyemi hated herself at this point. All she wanted to do was make Daniel and Youngman be friends again. "Oh, Youngman SSI, why is your lip bruised?" Daniel questioned, looking at it closely. Youngman shakes his head, trying so hard to make it seem like as if he was okay. "It's nothing, I felt," he sheepishly smiled. "You're going to have lunch with Daniel and Hyemi and you are going to put the past behind you." Seong-woo grabbed his collar and pulled him in closer to him. He sternly exclaimed. Youngman gulped, nodding his head. Seong-woo let go of him, and then walked away. There was a short moment of silence before Youngman sighed. "Daniel," he trailed off. Daniel looked up at him. He raised his brows. "I just want to apologize," he confessed. Daniel grinned, taking a look at Hyemi before back at Youngman. "I guess I was really just if she's happy with you. I should be happy for her, right?" He smiled, looking at Hyemi. "I'm happy for the both of you, really," Youngman admitted. Daniel's eyes widened. He never thought he'd ever see that coming. Neither did Heine. But deep down, Youngman was happy for the both of them. So let's just put the past behind us. Yeah. Youngman warmly smiled, putting out his hand, wanting to shake Daniel's. Daniel shakes his hand. He smiled. Yeah, let's put everything behind us. Chapter 10. Chapter 10: Come back to me. Vertical line. Daniel kissed Heine on her forehead before sending her off. Heine had to leave to Seoul to do her final touch UPS in moving back. She had to pack more stuff and say goodbye to those she had to leave. You'll come back, right? Daniel questioned the girl. Heine smiled. She tiptoed and gave Daniel a quick peck to the cheek. Yes, Daniel. I will come back, she reassured the boy. Daniel gave his girlfriend a tight hug before letting her go off into the express train. Her back faced him as he watched the girl get into the train, their distance increasing. Snowflakes are falling down, Daniel exhaled. A large amount of smoke came out of his mouth. Daniel had his hands in his front pocket of his leather jacket. As the train leaves, the two waved each other goodbye. And with that, the train in front of him is gone and the distance between them widened, and soon enough, Heine would be in a different city, miles away from each other. Days later. Danny boy, she has a life to live. Stop being so obsessed. She'll call you, okay? Minhun groaned while patting the back of his friend. Daniel ran his fingers through the locks of his hair. It's been like a week, bro. She hasn't returned any of my calls. Daniel was worried. Minhun sighed. He turned over to Jason, motioning him to knock some senses into Daniel. Daniel, moving from a city to another city isn't easy. It takes a lot of time. Maybe she doesn't have enough time to reply. Jason shrugged. Daniel was convinced that it was because she's busy, that's why she couldn't reply, rather than her totally forgetting about him or her just cheating on him. 2 days later. Outgoing call to Heine accepted, vertical line declined. Hello? The girl's voice sounded through the phone. Heine. Daniel wanted to speak but he was being cut off. Daniel, I can't talk right now. I have to sign some stuffs. Apparently, our stuffs are all missing. The truck got lost somewhere and just hugged, the girl complained. Oh, okay. Daniel was disappointed. You'll come back, right? Daniel tried to lighten up the mood. Yes, babe, I will. I was supposed to move back 3 days ago, but because the truck lost our stuff, it seems like I have to stay just a little longer, the girl sighed. Oh, well, do you want me to meet you? I can always drive to Seoul, Daniel suggested. It's okay, I don't want to trouble you. Just a few more days and we'll get to be together. She giggled, which made Daniel's heart flutter. Well, okay then. Take care, I love you. Daniel smiled to himself. I love you too, and vice versa. Hey you, seeing Daniel talk like that makes me puke. Woojin faked a gag. Jae-hoon laughed at him. Daniel threw a pillow at his friends, trying to make them stop teasing. I think that's cute. DY smiled to himself. Gwendolyn raised a brow at him. You need to find a girlfriend ASAP, he chuckled, making the rest laugh while DY the only one offended. That's the way, Daniel. Jae-hoon clapped his hands. Daniel was at the boxing ring, doing his usual routines. It has been 5 days since the last phone call they had. Daniel was worried for her. Daniel panted heavily. He falls down, trying to catch his breath because he has been punching the same bag over and over again for 30 minutes. His 10 friends clapped for him from afar. You're doing great, Danny. Gwendolyn cheered for his older brother. You wanna know something, Daniel? Seong-woo exclaimed from outside the ring. Daniel turned to look at his best friend, waiting for his continuation. I'm really proud of you. Ever since Heine came back into your life, it feels like you've changed to a happier Daniel. No more smoking, less drinking, No more getting into fights, Seong-hui explained. Daniel just smiled to himself. He was proud of himself for changing. Yeah. Me too, Jae-won proudly commented out of nowhere. And so did the 9 of them. Daniel laughed to himself. He was happy that he had his friends around whenever Hyemi isn't. Incoming call : Hyemi accept vertical line decline. Hello. Daniel panted heavily. Daniel, Hyemi trailed off. Yes ? Daniel did the same. I'm supposed to be coming back today. Now? Exactly, but I just received a call from the train service, she sighed, sounding disappointed. What did they say ? Daniel questioned. Look outside, Daniel, she exclaimed. And so Daniel did. He looked outside the window and all he could see was snow falling down heavily and piles of them by the roadside. Snow was all, Daniel said. Heaps of them, right ? Hyemi turned the question around. Baby, what are you trying to say ? Daniel was confused. Daniel, the train can't move because of the heavy snow. It blocked most area of the railway. It can't move, Hyemi explained, then sighing. So was the only thing Daniel could bring himself to say. And the next train won't be until a week later, said the girl. But I'll try, okay? If there's a spot open for a ride later, I'll hop on the next one as soon as possible, okay? Hyemi tried to lighten up the mood. Are you sure you don't want me to be there ? Daniel whined. Yes, Daniel. Don't come here, it's too dangerous and too cold. Please, Daniel, listen to me, Hyemi sternly said. So okay? I'll see you soon, I guess. Daniel pouted and then hanging up before she could even get the chance to say goodbye or even an I love you. Lol, Daniel, you done fucked up, boys gonna regret. Chapter 11. Chapter 11, so don't be sick, don't cry. Vertical line. Hyemi hangs up the call. She pursed her lips while putting her hands at the back pocket of her black jeans. She looked around. Everyone was waiting for the train to move, but it's impossible. She exhaled a huge amount of smoke. She stared at the sky, which was showering the town with little snowflakes. Please let the snow go away, she thought to herself. She wanted to quickly head back to Busan. The moving truck was already on the way back there. Hey I should have went with them, she thought to herself. Her mom and dad were still packing up the remaining stuff that they need. They told Hyemi to head over to Busan first since she had an impatient, loving, worried boyfriend waiting for her to come back. Oh no, Hyemi. I never thought I'd ever bump into you here, a familiar voice sounded at the back of the girl. She turned around, only to be greeted by her university roommate, Seong-hui. Hyemi's eyes widened, her jaw dropped. The two jumped up and down excitedly. It has been years since they last saw each other. The two hugged each other tightly. Oh my god. It's been years. Hyemi giggled. Seong-hui pouted while nodding her head. What are you doing here? Hyemi questioned. Seong-hui hummed. My boyfriend and I decided to explore Seoul together. We're supposed to leave for Busan, but the train is, not moving. Seong-hui sheepishly smiled. Hyemi was shocked. You have a boyfriend? Seong-hui nodded her head. Guess who? She clapped her hands. Hyemi had no idea who she was about to say. Oh, he's here. Seong-hui giggled while dragging her boyfriend beside her. Oh my god. Takada Kenta. Hyemi accidentally yelled out too loudly. Kenta shrieked. He jumped to Hyemi and then hugged the small girl right in front of him. Kenta's your boyfriend? Hyemi chuckled, pointing to Kenta. Kenta frowned. Hey, Daniel's your boyfriend, but you don't see me complaining, Kenta pouted while folding his arms. Seong-hui shrieked, irritating Kang Daniel. She gasped. Hyemi just smiled sheepishly at her while shrugging. What happened to him? Last time I saw him, He was screaming at Youngman and punching him. Selmy grinned, nudging Hayimi's elbow. Hayimi just rolled her eyes at Selmy. "He's doing fine, thank you for asking," she giggled. Kanda suddenly cut into the middle of their conversation. "Okay, don't make it obvious but is that I am Youngman sitting all alone at the bench there," he whispered close to them. Selmy just stared at the bench, where Kanda said Youngman was at. She looked up and down, trying to get a good view. So did Hayimi. "For Christ's sakes, I told you not to make it obvious, stupid," Kanda scoffed. "Okay, but why is he everywhere I go?" Hayimi whispered over to them. Selmy laughed out loud. "I know, right? You both are like a buy one get one free offer." She slapped her knee, laughing at her own joke. Kanda and Hayimi just looked at her in disappointment. "You became lamer, Selmy." "I am very disappointed," Hayimi shakes her head. "Should I go talk to Hai? Oh my god, he's looking at my direction." Hayimi was about to talk to him when Youngman looked up and coincidentally stared into her eyes. Hayimi immediately looked the other way, acting as if she didn't see him. Acting like as if she talking to Kenta. Soon enough, Youngman stood up and headed over to their direction. Kenta rolled his eyes. "Hayimi." Youngman butted into their conversation, nudging her elbow. Hayimi stepped back, closer to Kenta, smiling nervously at him. "Hello," she happily said. Youngman raised a brow. "You're happy today?" "Not really, I can't go back to Busan to see Daniel." "Not kinda happy?" she shrugged, laughing. Youngman's smile disappeared at the mention of Daniel. He almost forgot that she was together with him. "Right, you and Daniel are a thing now." Youngman pursed his lips and then frowned. "Well, this is awkward," Kanda whispered under his breath, which Hayimi could hear. 2 hours later, the snow seemed to slow down and melt a little, at least. "What, do you think we can finally go back?" Selmy shivered. She was hoping that any time now they could go back. Soon enough, the train conductor clapped his hands and gathered everyone to a corner. "So most of the snow are melted, which means the train can move. But it's a big risk that we're taking here because it's a 50-50 chance that maybe something bad will occur," he exclaimed. "Anyone who is willing to ride the train back to Busan now, please get on the train and I'll be in about 10 minutes. Thank you," he explained before leaving to the restroom. Most of the people were scared after hearing that 50-50 chance the conductor was talking about. "You wanna go?" Kenta asked Selmy. Selmy shrugged. "How about you?" She turned the question to Hayimi. Hayimi thought about it for a minute before shrugging. "Sure, why not? We all want to head back to Busan quick, right?" The 4 of them eventually got onto the train. They weren't the only ones in the train, there were many more. Probably about 40% of the people waiting decided to wait even longer because they had no reason to rush anyways. Soon, the 10 minutes were up and the train began moving. Hayimi rubs her hands together, trying to keep herself warm. Youngman was sitting right next to her while the couple sat in front of her. "Daniel thinks I'm coming back next week," Hayimi exclaimed. "Well, this will be a miracle for him then," Selmy smiled, happy for her friend. Youngman just kept his mouth shut the entire ride. "Oh, Youngman, you never really told us why you're in Seoul," Kanda tried to start a conversation with him. Youngman widened his eyes at the mention of his name. "Oh, I decided to visit my friends back in Seoul," he replied to Kanda's question. Hayimi woke up from a short nap. She found herself sleeping on Youngman's shoulder. He was wide awake. Kanda was sleeping, Selmy wasn't. So when she woke up, Selmy immediately gave her the look. Hayimi startled. She apologized to Youngman for whatever just happened. "It's okay, I was the one who placed your head on my shoulder," he sheepishly smiled. "Sorry, I shouldn't have done that," he immediately apologized. "Hey it's okay, Hyena awkwardly laughed, moving slightly further away from Youngman. "Is that the train conductor?" Youngman tried to change the subject. "Me." Hyena and Youngman both turned their gaze to the man in a navy blue uniform, walking towards them. "Don't worry kids, it's on autopilot," he chuckled, sipping a little on his tea. Somehow, in that moment, Hyena felt uneasy. She felt weird. She didn't even feel like herself. She felt like as if something bad was going to happen if the conductor didn't get back to his seat soon. "You okay?" Youngman whispered over to her. She rubbed the back of her neck. "Why yeah, I guess," she shrugged before leaning back on the chair. That was when her gaze was soon diverted from Youngman when she realized something huge falling from the mountains right by them. Is that a glacier?" Hyena stuttered. Youngman raised his brow before looking into the direction she was looking at. Hey, sir. Yes, stop the train," Youngman yelled out of nowhere, before pushing the man back to where he belongs. Everyone in the train started to panic after hearing Youngman scream and seeing that huge rock slowly falling from the mountain. Hyena's heart beat fast. She didn't know what to feel or what to do. "Fuck! Am I going to die?" Me shrieked, waking up Kenta. With fingers trembling, Hyena pulled out her phone to text someone until she heard a loud crash and then her sight turning into pitch black. "Daniel offline. If anything bad happens to me, always remember that I love you and I just want the best for you. Please be happy without me Daniel. Please. Vertical line send vertical line undo. Your time limit is up try again." Daniel fiddled with his phone, throwing it up and down, doing stupid tricks on it. "Yo! Look at this," he giggled, nudging Seong-woo's shoulder while he did a trick. Seong-woo scoffed. "That's stupid, Daniel, you're a grown man." He rolled his eyes before concentrating on the video game he was playing with Woojin and Gwendolyn. "You're a grown man too, so stop playing with little kids." Daniel pouted, folding his arms and then leaning back on the beanbag he was sitting on. He threw his phone up and down before he received a ring. Daniel shrieked like a little girl before having his phone land on his face. Daniel winced in pain. "Fush it!" he yelled. The phone continued to ring. "Daniel stop whining and answer your phone," Sung-woo sighed, staring at his pitiful friend. Daniel rubbed his eyes which was hurt, before noticing that he was getting a call from Hyena. He found himself smiling like a creep. "Hello?" Daniel giggled through the phone. His friends immediately turned their gaze over to a giggly Daniel who was blushing. "Hello, this is Dr. Kim. Hyena has been into an accident while on the train back to Busan. You're the first on her speed dial, so whoever you are, please head over to Seoul General Hospital as soon as possible before we begin to examine her. Thank you," the man through the phone hastily explained before hanging up. Daniel's smile disappeared within a second. He didn't have time to react. Soon enough, he found himself standing up, wearing his denim jacket, taking his bike helmet and running off. "Daniel Sung-woo raised his voice but he ignored him. They knew it was something bad, but they're not going to let Daniel go off alone. Whatever was happening, Daniel needed support. So the 10 of them took their helmets and hopped on each other's bike and followed Daniel. Busan to Seoul takes quite a long time. Daniel found himself speeding every now and then. But the road was empty because it was cold and snowing heavily. Daniel also found himself shedding a few tears. The voice of his girlfriend lingered in his ear. "Don't come here, it's too dangerous and too cold. Please, Daniel, listen to me." And whenever he found himself hearing her voice, Daniel would get reminded of the time where Hyena was crying, telling him that she was sick through the phone and the song Daniel wrote for her. Please don't be sick, don't cry," Daniel whispered to himself over and over again throughout the entire ride to Seoul. Chapter 12. Chapter 12, Your Last Words as You Got Away. vertical line. Daniel's fist clenched the moment he saw Youngman walking out of the infirmary with only a broken elbow and a bruised nose. "He's clean. No serious injuries at all," he thought to himself as he glanced over to Youngman every once in a while. Youngman sat across Daniel. No words were spoken between them because he knew it wasn't the right time to speak to him. Plus, a few days ago Youngman was vibing with his group of friends. The 10 of them just left Daniel alone. They knew Daniel needed his time alone. He's just raw and vulnerable. Anything could break him at this point. Train to Busan caught in an accident when a glacier fell from the mountain and hits the train. Many were injured. The train conductor is in a very critical condition, so are 3 other victims. Stay tuned for more details. The news live sounded through the small TV that was hung up on the wall. Daniel shakes his leg, fiddling with his fingers. Something in him just thought that Jaime was part of the 3 others. It has been 3 hours since Daniel got there and no news about Jaime at all. Hey! Youngman slowly walked over to him. He gulped, slowly praying that he wouldn't have to die today because of Daniel. Daniel looked up then avoided eye contact because he was embarrassed to have someone he doesn't really like see him cry and have bloodshot red eyes. Daniel just hummed in response. How are you coping?" Youngman stuttered. "Like shit, actually." He lets out a sarcastic chuckle, looking down on the floor the entire time. "Yes, she was happy," Youngman exclaimed. Daniel looked up, raising his brow, expecting Youngman to continue. "She told us that you expected her to come back a week later, and that she's so excited to see you." Youngman weakly smiled. Youngman hoped Daniel would be felt better, but it only made him feel like shit. It's my fault," Daniel mumbled to himself. "And no, it's not." Sung-Woon overheard their conversation and immediately budged in. Daniel had his hands over his head, aggressively shaking his leg again and again. He thought it was his fault. Because of him, Jaime was persistent onto getting on that train. "It's my fault." Daniel raised his voice, slowly getting higher each time he repeated the same thing. "It's all my fault," he cried out. This time, his tears were profusely coming out, impossible to stop. Hey, Daniel. It's not." Jason ran over to him and comforted him. Soon, the 8 of them surrounded him and comforted him, patting his back and trying to calm him down. Daniel stopped crying. He sniffled, looking up at his friends surrounding him. It's not," he weakly said. "It's not, Daniel, it's not your fault. Don't think like that," Minhyun whispered over and over to Daniel, reassuring him. "I think you should leave." Seong-woo stands up and backed Youngman away from Daniel. "I was just trying to help." Youngman scoffed. "Yeah, well, can't you see he's already broken enough? Stop trying to help when you're never going to be the solution to his problems." Seong-woo pushed Youngman away, turning his back and walking away. Another 2 hours passed. Sung-Woon was sleeping on Daniel's lap and Woojin was sleeping on Daniel's left shoulder. Everyone was sleeping besides Daniel. Soon, he found Seolmi and Kenta walking out of the same room that Youngman was in. Seolmi was on a wheelchair. Kenta had a broken leg and sprained elbow, slowly pushing Seolmi. Daniel's eyes widened. "Seolmi? Kenta?" Daniel mouthed to himself while watching the two come out. The couple looked depressed. Bloodshot red eyes, they looked super tired. "Jaime's in a critical condition, Daniel." Seolmi pursed her lips. She was about to cry when she spoke but she gathered all the might in her to stop herself from doing so. Daniel rolled his eyes back, trying not to cry too. He felt like an emotional wreck. He was praying to every god he knew to make Jaime all right, to make her stay alive. "I don't do this often but please, I won't ask for anything more. I'll even start praying, I'll start going to church, I'll turn over a new leaf, I'll do whatever you want, just please let her live." Daniel whispered to himself. An hour passed and Daniel finally saw the doctor walking out of the room. Hyena was in Kang Daniel. He called out. He shoots up, making Sung Woon and Woojin drop onto the floor and immediately wake up. That's me," he stuttered. Hyena is in a very critical condition. Unfortunately, the impact hit her very deeply and she has a lot of open wounds. Due to that, she lost a lot of blood, both internally and out, the doctor sighed, avoiding eye contact with Daniel. Soon enough, Daniel found himself wanting to cry again. He knew none of this was going to go well. He was just waiting for him to drop the bomb on him. "You have about 10 minutes before, you know," he explained. Daniel closed his eyes, trying to pray that everything is just a dream. "Her parents are on the way, just use this time wisely." He patted his back before walking away but he stopped. "Oh, and here's her phone." He gave Daniel her phone then proceeded to walk away. Jason came up to Daniel and hugged him tight. Then they had a small group hug, for about 10 seconds before Daniel pulled away and slowly walked into the room. The heart rate monitor was beating slowly, like as if it would go flat any second. Daniel's heart ached at the sight of his girlfriend on the hospital bed, about to go any minute from now. His legs became jelly. He was trembling, it hurt him so much. He sat right next to her, slowly intertwining fingers with her. Daniel can't help but let out a tear. Daniel." Hyena called out his name weakly. Her hands cupping his face, Daniel only held her hand closer to him. "I love you," she weakly exclaimed. I love you too," Daniel hesitated. At this point, his voice was breaking. "Please be happy, Daniel," she softly said. "I want you to be happy, always," she weakly smiled, wiping the tears away from Daniel's eyes. "Please always remember me, Daniel." She tried to smile, but she couldn't because every move she made hurt so much. Soon, Hyena found herself shedding a single tear, falling onto the pillow of her bed. Daniel nodded his head, up and down. "I will, Hyena, I will forever remember you. I will never forget you, Hyena, I love you so fucking much," he hiccuped. "When I'm gone, don't do anything stupid, okay?" She lightly chuckled, caressing his hair. Daniel shakes his head. "Hyena, Daniel confessed but Hyena cuts him off. "Shut up, Daniel. Do whatever you want, okay? I know you, Daniel. You do that to numb the pain, am I right?" She smiled. Daniel chuckled. "I'm sorry, Hyena, it's all my fault. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't even be here," Daniel cussed himself. "It's not your fault, Daniel, it's never your fault," she emphasized on the word never. "Fucking hell, are you crying?" Jae-yoon whispered to Woojin. Woojin startled. He was taken aback. "Shut the shit up, Jae-yoon, I'm sweating from my eyes," he scoffed, turning away from Jae-yoon. You're crying too," he loudly whispered to Seong-wood. "Jesus, Woojin, do you not know how to shut up?" he groaned, weakly punching his chest. "Daniel, I don't have much time, so goodbye. I love you so much, Daniel, it's always been you. I hope whenever you think of me, you think of happy thoughts, but I hope you'll move on, Daniel." "Move on so you can be happy?" Hyena weakly spoke, cupping his cheek. She wanted to kiss him and hug him and just be with him but she can't. And it really hurts her. "Hyena, baby. Oh my God. What happened to you?" Hyena's mom barged into the room, yelling loudly. That was the cue for Daniel and his friends to leave. Daniel let go of her hands. "I love you," she whispered, and that just made Daniel burst out crying outside the room. Daniel was wailing, punching himself over and over again because it was his fault. How could he ever forgive himself for being the cause of his girlfriend's death? "Daniel, it's enough," Jae-won sighed. trying to get a grip of Daniel. "Get away from me!" he yelled, pushing Jaewon away from him. He ran his fingers through the locks of his hair. How was he going to move on from this? He looked up and saw Youngman standing in the corner. "It should have been you," he whispered to himself. "It should have been fucking you," he cried out, leaning on the back of the wall. "Daniel!" Hyene's mom called him. He stood up, wiping away his tears. He tried to smile. "Yes, she gone," she exclaimed. And in that moment, Daniel felt like his whole entire world collapsed. It felt like as if he had no motivation to live. It felt like as if he could die at any moment. It felt like as if he lost himself and he's never going to come back home. With his head back on the wall, he let his tear fall. "Your last words as you got away, 'I miss you,'" he whispered to himself. Chapter 13 Chapter 13 To hold pretty flowers like you. Vertical line. Daniel stands up from his seat and walked over to the podium to make a speech. His friends cheered him on from the bench, mouthing him a fighting and giving him a thumbs up. "So well, I don't know how to start." Daniel lets out a soft chuckle, to distract him from tearing up. But the moment his eyes met the coffin that was sitting there fondly, he can't help but tear up. Hyene was one of a kind, I must say. I met her when I hit rock bottom. When I thought I couldn't find love again, I found her and suddenly my world started to light up. Daniel pursed his lips. Jesus Christ, Hyene was one of the most beautiful things it ever laid hands on, and I'm so lucky to have loved someone like her. In that moment, he felt a tear roll down his cheek. I lost her once, and that was the most stupidest thing it ever did, letting her go. When I watched her back go further away from me, I knew not only did I lost something that loved me, but I lost something that I truly loved and wanted to stay in my life forever. She made me so happy, crazily happy, like as if I was the only happy one on earth. And to think that I once hurt a perfect angel like her. I hated myself for ever doing that, because who could ever hurt her? He lightly chuckled. She made me appreciate all the little things in life. She became such a big impact. Even the little things I do reminds me of her. Seeing my cats every day when I wake up reminds me of her because we adopted a cat together. Standing all alone while looking at myself in the mirror reminds me of her because she used to always critic my hair every morning before I go off to school. Sitting all alone on the park bench reminds me of her because that's the day she told me she had to leave for Seoul. Practically everything I do reminds me of her. That's how much an impact she has left on me. She's so beautiful, I don't even think I could ever love anyone else other than her. Daniel stopped for a while. He wanted to burst out crying, but he had to put up a strong front. And come to think of it, I didn't even deserve her. A useless man like me who has no dreams or whatever, doesn't deserve a smart, intelligent, beautiful woman like her. Hyene, I hope wherever you are, you're happy. I hope no one could hurt you wherever you are. I hope you get to love someone who actually deserves you in the afterlife. He weakly smiled. Thank you, Hyene. Thank you for all the memories we spent together, be it good or bad, because I'll keep them both in my heart forever either way. Thank you for loving me even though the amount of times I've hurt you. Hyene, you'll forever hold a special place in my heart. I hope we'll meet again one day, someday, but until that day comes, I'll forever pray to God that you're doing fine wherever you are. Daniel ended his speech. Everyone clapped for him. He walked back to his seat and his friends hugged him tightly, cheering him on and telling him that he did an amazing job. Well, Kang Daniel has prepared a song for us. Let's hear it. Hyene's father smiled, clapping his hands for him. The people there were excitedly cheering on for Daniel, even Hyene's family. Daniel brought his guitar up on stage and sat on a chair. He adjusted the mic. He took a deep breath. Seeing his friends was what encouraged him on. I wrote this song with the help of my friend J1, he spoke into the mic. This song I wrote it while waiting for Haimi to get back from Seoul. Nothing great, but I hope you enjoy it. Daniel smiled and bowed before strumming his guitar to get the perfect melody. A stupid song that can reach heaven. My prayer that spent all night in tears. I hope it reaches your heart. He started to sing, avoiding eye contact with everyone. He only looked at her. I was young. I didn't know I'd be like this. I took advantage of the good back then. The smile you left behind. It still remains in my heart. Honestly, I think I still need to receive love. The longer I'm left alone, the more afraid I get. I miss those days. I miss you so much. Yeah. I miss you so much. Now I finally feel our space. I miss you so much. Tears are falling like this, but why didn't I know? Haimi, I miss you so much. Daniel whispered all over again and again to himself at night in bed. Another day and he can't seem to sleep. All he does is stare at his dull and boring ceiling, wishing for the same thing, for the girl he loves to come back. But why does it seem like as if she's gone from his grip forever? Without even realizing, he sheds a tear. Why didn't I know? He whispered to himself. So beautiful, beautiful. You're more beautiful than anyone else. So don't be sick. Don't cry. If you can hear this song for you, come back to me. Too scared. My fever is getting so high. Daniel, Haimi sobbed through the phone. Daniel's heart ached at the voice of his concerned and sick ex-love. Don't cry. Come on. Soon, you'll wake up and the fever is gone. He giggled, trying to lighten up the mood. Hearing you giggle like that, I would most definitely recover faster, she chuckled. So I miss you. I miss you. Seeing myself standing alone in the mirror. It's strange and I'm afraid I need you. I hate myself for realizing this now. Come back to me. I hate this. Daniel yelled all by himself in the toilet. He punched the mirror. It didn't even crack. His knuckles became bruised. His hands resting on each side of the sink. He cried all alone by himself. It's so empty, he whispered by himself. He couldn't even look at the mirror without thinking of her. I'm so empty, he cursed himself. I need you, please. Memories are like a big garage, like the ocean. I am lost in them all day. Even this loneliness that I'm feeling are traces of you. So I force my eyes shut and try to endure through this day. I miss you so much. Now I finally feel our space. I miss you so much. Tears are falling like this, but why didn't I know? That's great for the pre-chorus, right? Daniel smiled as he wrote down the notes. J1 gave his friend a thumbs up, happy for him. Yeah. The son of music is shaking looking at you, J1 smirked. Who the hell is son of music? Daniel raised a brow. Me, J1 winked at him and then laughing like a psychopath. So beautiful, beautiful. You're more beautiful than anyone else. So don't be sick. Don't cry. If you can hear this song for you, come back to me. He looked at the coffin. He can't help but want to break down. So I miss you. I miss you. Seeing myself standing alone in the mirror. It's strange and I'm afraid I need you. I hate myself for realizing this now. I want to hold flowers that are pretty like you and stand in front of you again. I want to look better than before and appear in front of you again. I brought your favorite. Daniel excitedly jumps up and down while handing Haimi flowers. It was Dais's, was always Haimi's favorite. They're so beautiful, Daniel. This is amazing. She giggled, before tiptoeing and giving her boyfriend a peck on the cheek. Daniel used to always give Haimi flowers every once in a while before and after she got back from Seoul. It was like a daily routine for Daniel to show up at her dorm with a bouquet of daisies. But who knew it could come to this? Daniel, at her funeral, standing in front of her coffin, with a bouquet of daisies in his hands, and he laid them down on top of it. "Why your favorite?" Daniel whispered all by himself. "I'm drawing out the familiar times with my hands, crying in the same place like a broken clock. The dazzling you, the angelic you, the beautiful you, I want to hold you." Days after the funeral, Daniel only became worse. He cried every night, without a doubt. No one could make him happy anymore. He really did hit rock bottom this time. Sometimes, Daniel will find himself drawing out circles with his hands. That's only when he's reminded of the times they were together. And at times, Daniel will find himself crying at the same place again and again. He could never leave his bed. He cries every day and single night on it, wishing for the same thing over and over again, to just hold her for one last time like a broken clock. "I want to see you again, so beautiful, beautiful. What if you're crying somewhere? Don't leave, don't go, even if your love is a lie. I don't care what you say. So I miss you, I miss you." Your last words as you got far away. Every now and then Daniel would always think of the last few words that came out of her mouth. Other than, "I love you," of course. "Please be happy, Daniel." He'd hear her voice linger in his ear every night before he sleeps. And every time he thinks he can never be happy, he'll remember her saying, "I want you to be happy," and move on so you can be happy. But how? How can he move on when his happiness is gone? How does he move on when moving on feels like cheating? How does he move on when there's no more home for him? It's strange. I'm afraid. I need you. I hate myself for realizing this now. A stupid song that can reach heaven. My prayer that spent all night in tears. I hope it reaches your heart. Daniel ended the song there. People cheered for him. Some were crying because they relate to it, but his friends clapped loudly, louder than anyone there. Daniel bowed down and walked towards his friends and hugged them once more. His love might be gone, his home might have collapsed and vanished, but he always had his friends to rely on, the second home to always fall back on. And he was thankful for that. He will always be thankful. Exactly a year later, Daniel leaned back on his bike. He placed another cigarette in between his lips. He lit it up. Then removing it, watching the smoke come out of his mouth. He was shivering. Cold winter. Luckily, he was wearing his hoodie to protect him from the cold. He watched the snowflakes fall onto his hoodie and onto his skin while waiting for his friends to arrive. He had plenty of time before his friends arrived. They all decided to check out the new carnival that was in Daegu. Every time he thought of it, he can't help but always say, "Ah, Hyena always loved going to carnivals." He took out his wallet, trying to check the amount of money he has before he goes off, making sure he didn't need to withdraw any money. Just when he was about to open it, a small piece of paper fell out of nowhere. He bent down to pick it up, only to realize it was a picture of his ex-girlfriend and him together. It was right after she got back. She was wearing Daniel's denim jacket. Both of them were stupidly posing. Seong-woo took that picture. He always kept it. It was one of the most happiest day of his life. "I smoked. I get it. I know you. You do it to numb the pain, right?" Her voice lingered in his ear. Daniel immediately took out the cigarette in between his lips and threw it onto the ground, stepping on it. He shakes his head, adjusting his hair. Without even realizing, he was slowly letting out a tear. It dropped onto the picture he was holding on. "I miss you so much," he whispered to himself. "It's strange and I'm so afraid. If you hear this, please come back to me," he sighed, talking to himself, rolling his head back. "Please," he said one last time. "Danny boy." Seong-woo yelled from afar as he parked his bike right next to Daniel. Daniel immediately puts his wallet away, wiping his tears quickly. "Finally you guys are here," he groaned, chuckling nervously, trying to act like as if nothing was wrong. But come on, they were his best friends. Obviously they knew her again. Seong-woo sighed, patting his back. tiptoeing to reach his height. "Fuck. Daniel, can you just bend down a little?" he groaned, stomping his feet and walking away. "Come on, let's go," Jason smiled, before walking to his bike. The rest of his friends start their engines and waited for Daniel to start his. Daniel slowly got on his bike. He deeply inhaled and exhaled. "We got together last winter, but this winter is coming without you," Daniel whispered to himself. "I hope it reaches your heart, you hyena," he sighed. Daniel adjusted his hair and finally put on his helmet. Starting his engine, he gave his friends the signal to finally move. Daniel has been a wreck ever since the love of his life passed. Daniel not only lost half of his heart, but also lost someone to call home. But he always had a second home to fall back on, and those were his friends. They have always had Daniel's back ever since they met. They were really loyal friends. People that Daniel wanted to stay in his life forever and ever. But no matter how many support he received, nothing could ever change him crying on his bed in the middle of the night, realizing that the love of his life is gone, and nothing can change the fact that she will forever be gone, and that nothing can get her back. But Daniel will forever pray to God that she will be happy, pray to God that he'll regain happiness soon, and happiness that is her, hoping that his prayers, that was spent all night in tears, will reach her heart, will reach heaven. Thank you. Thank you for reading Beautiful. I actually loved writing this. I immediately got inspired after watching Beautiful less than 3. Also, since I've finished writing all my active books, I'll be publishing 3 new books soon. Or maybe sooner than soon. Thank you for all the votes and comments. They really make my day. Mute on my IG at IRHeadioff. Slide into my DMs and tell me you're from Wattpad so I know. Thank you guys for reading. It got into top 100 in short story. I'm so happy. I don't deserve all these ranks, but it's all thanks to you guys. Don't forget to share if you loved it. Or you could also check out my other books. Truly a coxo IR Headioff, your favorite woojin stand less than 3. The end.